I know the mirror mentioned a spec work sends most designers running for their pitchforks. It's never really bothered me that much. If people don't value the work that I do, no amount of complaining is going to make them value it more. And with the exception of the occasional large screw up by an agency or company, most of these projects that are specky are like small potatoes. Somebody who only wants to pay $50 for a logo or thinks having a competition for it is a good idea, I don't want that work anyway. There's one thing I know about business. I probably know more, actually. But I want to talk about one of those things. There will always be somebody out there who does your work faster and cheaper. Designers who take part in these contests are throwing a dart against the wall blindfolded, hoping that they win. More power to them. So not all that long ago, I was pitching a pretty big project for me. One of the biggest I've ever pitched. I was pitching against some pretty big agencies. I totally lost that job. I put together my best work, I put it in a PDF, even though I hate putting my work in a PDF because it gets all blurry and just doesn't look good. That's what you gotta do. And when we're on the call and we're pitching the project, I could gather from the client that the other agency had done a ton of legwork for their project already. You could just kind of feel it from the conversation. The client wanted to know exactly what we were going to do. They wanted to see kind of samples of work that we were going to do for them. It was kind of clear to me that someone that was already pitching on the project had done that for them. They didn't come out and say it, so I couldn't like call them out on it directly. I was just trying to weave my way the best I could through the meeting. My answer was something like, I just started talking to you. I don't know the problem yet. I'm not going to show you how I'm solving it. But up until that day, it didn't really bother me that agencies were doing spec work like that. And I started to think, like, what is this client actually going to get from the agency they hired? But is there a problem they're trying to solve with this app? They don't know. They haven't even talked to the client yet. Who are they designing for? They don't know that either. They just started. They're taking a stab in the dark. It's kind of curious, how common of a practice is this? It sounds like it happens a lot. So I went to Designer News and asked around. I got this great response from James Acklin. He said, the work you, the agency, presents is not in any way intended to be a final product. It's more of a demonstration of your capabilities to think strategically and land on a creative solution. Okay, that's cool, but let's do some math. I'm going to shoot low. I'm going to start with a conservative round number. Let's say your agency only charges $150 an hour. You decide to put 2 people on a proposal full-time for an entire week. 2 people for 1 full week costs your agency $12,000 in billable time. So if you get the gig, you recoup that money and you can then bill the client for it. You can build that into your proposal and you make that money back. But you don't get every project. I would say I get personally about 1 out of every 4 projects that I propose. We're not talking about like throwing out ballparks and emails. We're talking about put together a proposal, pitch a project, and actually see if you get it. So the 3 projects that you don't get, assuming 1 out of 4 is the average, cost you $36,000 that you have no chance of recouping. Which means to get 1 project, it costs your agency $48,000 to get the job. So if you land a $200,000 job, that means a quarter of it has already been spent. Now I'm sure some people are watching thinking, Brad's just making up numbers. Here's a quote from Barry Saunders, who also posted on that Designer News thread. I've worked at places that blew well over $100,000 in effort hours for a pitch that they lost. I totally believe him. If it is a big enough account, if it's $1 million project, what's $100,000 to nail that project? But there's another disservice here. You've sold an idea. You have shown up front the client something they like, and they hired you because they liked it. They expect you to produce that. Even if the expectation is that you're still going to go out, do the legwork, and then try to solve that problem, they've already seen what they like. They already have a solution in mind because you've presented it to them. What if you go out and do research and find out you were totally wrong? Well, as a designer, I would go to the client and say, hey, you know what? Our initial assumptions were wrong. We're going to go in this totally different direction. You know that direction we sold you on? Nah, not going to do that. So you're either stuck building something you know won't work, or you have to go back and unsell what you already have sold to the client. I have worked with big agencies, with sales reps and project managers, and they don't go back and unsell and say, we were wrong. They plow ahead. So how do you pitch clients? When I'm talking to a client initially, the most common thing I say is, I don't know what I'm going to do. This is my process for finding out what I'm going to do. Sales guys hate the words, I don't know. And to a certain extent it makes sense. I'm the professional. I should know what to do in any circumstance. But part of what makes me a professional is knowing how to find the answer to those questions, not knowing the answer off the top of my head. On the plus side, every time I do a pitch like this, I get a little bit better at explaining my process. So what do you think? What am I missing? Are there any upsides to pitching like this that I just don't see? Have you worked at an agency that's done spec work like this and it's turned out great? Let me know in the comments. Or shoot me a message on Twitter to let me know, like, what you think about it. And thank you very much for listening. If you enjoyed it, subscribe down below. Thank you.